Hi, I'm Kathy Schneider with the podcast series Finding a New Starting Line. And I'm here today with swim coach Bruno Darzi. He exemplifies what it means to coach athletes at new starting lines, swimmers in particular, at all levels and at all ages. Most famously, he coached five-time Olympic swimmer and 12-time Olympic medalist Dara Torres to the 2012 Olympic trials when she was age 45, an age when most elite swimmers have long since retired. She placed fourth there by a tiny margin. And Bruno, by the way, was also part of her coaching team during the 2008 Olympics, where she won three silver medals at age 41. Now Bruno coaches Boston College's swim team with Dara Torres. Bruno, a national caliber swimmer himself, demonstrates world-class technical and global coaching experience. And in addition to Dara, for example, he's coached several three-time Olympic medalists and coached at the Pan American Games and at the World Championships. And he's also coached at club, national, age group levels and been a leader in USA Swimming's governance. Bottom line, Bruno has always advocated for athletes to redefine what's possible at every level, at every stage of life. And Dara's performance alone was the epitome of longevity, resilience, and reinvention in sport. So, Bruno, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about finding new starting lines in any sport, at any age, at any level. So what you've learned from coaching Daras and others can help to anyone. And we know that an athlete's life isn't just about physical training. It's about time management, belief, adaptation, possibility, and so much more. So I guess first, welcome. And can you tell us what points you would like to share that you've learned from working with Dara and others that can really apply to anyone? What helps?
First of all, Kathy, thanks for having me here. I appreciate the invitation. I think one of the most important things that can help anybody in any situation is in order for you to build something or strive for something, you have to trust it. You have to trust that you're able to accomplish whatever goal you set in your mind that you want to accomplish. One of the things that was interesting about the situation and my relationship with Dara is I met Dara in about 2005. I wasn't her direct coach in 2008 when she was training for the Olympic Games and ended up going to Beijing and earning three silver medals. The person that was my mentor at the time, Michael Liver, was the person that kind of mentored me for nearly 12 years and taught me most of the things I know about swimming today. And he was her primary coach. And he and I had several conversations about Dara and her talent because when Dara approached him the very first time when she wanted to be part of our team, Michael was under the impression she wanted to join the master's program. And Dara was very persistent in her way of it's I don't want to train for masters. I want to compete at a high level again. And so when Michael started working with her, at the very beginning, the focus was let's compete at masters competitions just to see where we are. And someone else was one of our sprint coaches, was a primary coach. So when it comes to believing at the very beginning, it was I think Michael and I guess the whole stuff was a little skeptical about what she wanted to accomplish, and I think he had to do a lot based on her age. And you don't get somebody at the age of 41 attempting to accomplish what she did. I think she ended up, in hindsight, when you look back at what she accomplished at such a late age for an elite level athlete, it was she created a precedent for other athletes to achieve things at later stages in their lives. We had to go through an adjustment process because, her body wasn't recovering at the same pace. So, there's some things that we needed to do to adjust. They were not the same that you would do with an athlete that was at a collegiate level or another professional athlete that was in their mid 20s. Trust was something that came with time. We build over a number of months and weeks and months in trying to figure out what it would work for her. And I think once that trust was built and she believed in the work that was done back then, it was a lot easier coaching her and understanding what to expect when we were doing sets with her. It's literally, believing in yourself and building something, whatever that is that you set yourself in your mind that you want to accomplish, that it's really important for you to, whoever is working with you, to have the same set of beliefs that you do.
Yeah, that's really important for the athlete coach relationship to believe in the same things, right? To be aligned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if there's any doubt in the process, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have some questions of what you're doing, if it's working or not working. That's part of coaching, regardless if you're coaching somebody, at a later stage in their life or whatever technical skill that you're working with. You may always, at some point, question some of the things you're doing, but that's not the point. The point is, whatever goal that you set yourself to achieve, as long as there is the mindset and the idea that that is always the end goal, regardless of the challenges that you face along the way, I think that is paramount for something like this to work. And even if there's some shortcomings along the way, and there will be some obstacles along the way, I think it's very important for you to never deviate of what your goals actually are. And you have to persist. You have to continue to, you may have to adjust the plan along the way, but never really deviate of your final and end goal. So.
That's a great point. So believe in yourself, trust the process but and have the mindset that you can work through challenges and that you're gonna and adjust to some of them and you're gonna go for it. Another question is, what do you think about the importance of planning your time? Because most of us, beyond sort of college and certain, at the highest levels, we're juggling different things. How important it is for a coach and athlete to plan their whole lives apart from just the sport. Can you comment on that?
I think it's very important for everybody to have some sort of, I guess, organization skills and how you plan the way that your day is going to go, your week is going to go, and what you are attempting to accomplish. I can give you an example when I work with Dara of how detailed her schedule was. So when she was training for Beijing in 2008, she was still swimming 6 times a week. She was still doing it if for 3 days a week. She was still doing two workouts, what we call doubles. So she was swimming a total of 9 workouts a week. In 2012, the experience was completely different. In 2008, her daughter Tessa was born. She was born in 2006. So Dara had to make adjustments to her life and, taking care of her daughter, which was at that point a priority, and trying to achieve her goal of making the Olympic team in 2008. In 2012, Tessa was a little bit older. She was a little bit more independent. So when Dara and I sat down, and at that time, Michael was no longer around us because he had passed in 2011. When Dara and I sat down to lay out the plan for her for 2012, we had to go over a weekly schedule, which looked very differently. Instead of doing 9 workouts, Dara was then swimming only 5 workouts. There
Mm.
were no double workouts. The way that the week went was she was swimming in a single workout Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Her Thursday was a day off. And then on Friday and Saturday were the last 2 workouts of the week. We felt that that Thursday was very important to allow her body to recover. And then on the top of that, beyond allowing her body to recover in between the workouts, she needed to schedule her other obligations that she had as a professional athlete, somebody that was um, a person that was so famous in the swimming world and in athletic world in general. She had some responsibilities with sponsors. She had some responsibilities with, with her job and her interviews and she had to travel. So anything that we did was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we work out and we do the bulk of the training at the beginning of the week while the body is still fresh. She would recover on Thursday, which allowed her to do all the non-athletic responsibilities that she had on Thursday. We would finish out the week by training Friday and Saturday, and Sunday was another day of recovery for her. So I remember a very interesting situation where we kind of follow the plan that Michael had laid out in 2008 that from May 1st, where trials was in June, from May 1st on, she wouldn't travel for any other business related activities. That was the plan, right? So, she calls me late April, she said, "Hey, I just got this phone call from a sponsor that wants me to do a talk in Orlando." And, we're based in Fort Lauderdale area, so Orlando's not too far. And and I said, okay, well, remember our conversation at the beginning of the cycle where you're not supposed to travel. I mean, your body is not recovering at the same rate. And, she kind of explained to me in detail what it entailed and her, what the things that she needed to do. So long story short, she had a couple options. Either she would, get a driver, somebody would drive her to Orlando to go and do this talk in front of a number of people and then drive back, or she would fly there. So the flight from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando, it's a 30, 45-minute flight tops. So the person really wanted her to be there. So what we did was she ended up traveling. It was a Thursday. So she took an 8 o'clock flight on a Thursday morning, which was her day off. By 12 o'clock, she was doing her talk, which lasted a little bit less than an hour. By 3 p.m., she was home. The person made arrangements based on what Dara and I had agreed on at the very beginning of her plan and accommodated the requirements of somebody that, at an elite level need to have some other obligations other than just the training. And it was able to accommodate the request that she had. That goes on to show on the dedication of what she wanted to accomplish. During the week, what we had is that the workouts were mostly in the morning, especially because during the summer we deal with thunderstorms in Florida. So the primary workout was always in the morning, and then it would be followed by weight training in the gym for about an hour after the 2 hour workout. So her training did not exceed, and I would say 99% of the times did not exceed 4,000 yards or 4,000 meters. And then she would lift for about an hour after the workout. She had a scheduled massage or resistive stretching routine that was done immediately after that with two of the trainers that work with her. They do Quijada stretching, which is they do manipulation on her. She's actually not really stretching herself. Somebody else is. And that was done religiously every single day. The idea was to maximize the recovery in between the workouts to give her the best opportunity for her to perform at the highest level the very next day. So the routine that she had was waking up, swimming, lifting, training, and then resting. And then she had all the other obligations with her daughter, the school or pickup or, anything that she needed to do. Everything was scheduled around accomplishing the same goal. She wanted to go to Olympic Games. She wanted to medal at the Olympic Games. The way that we laid out the whole week was how can we best maximize what we need to do? And that's how we did.
That's a really good example of the importance of planning your whole life in order to find a new starting line, and your whole life changes from year to year. It can change from year to year, or at least every 4 years, or however, you make a job change, you have a child, your child gets older, whatever. So, one's more successful if you're thinking about all the different components of life. You can't just focus on the sport.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Great point. So the other question I have for you is, even at the highest levels, which you and Dara exemplify, what about the importance when you're thinking of starting a new goal that's either a new goal because you're older or you're starting a new goal in a new sport, but what about the importance of patience and stressing that?
That's very important because along the way there's going to be some challenges. It's not going to be smooth sailing every time you have a plan and you want to try to accomplish something. Um, there's a couple of things that when working with Dara that we ran into that presented some challenges for us, and we had to find a way around it, or how to problem solve it, I guess. At the age of 45, we believe that she was going through some premenopausal stage of her life. There were some changes going on in her body, and her body was not recovering at the same rate, even though we were doing everything we could to allow her to recover. I mean, she had a very rigorous meal plan that she would follow every time we traveled. The registered dietitian working with us would tell us what restaurants she could eat and what to eat when we went. So we realized at some point working with her, because when we would go to competitions, and most of the competitions were indoors, is that she was often very cold. She would be shivering behind the blocks, and it didn't matter how much clothes she was wearing, or she would wear a parka, she would wear gloves, she would wear pants and socks. She was always cold. And one of the things that we ended up figuring out that was interesting that we had to adapt along the way is anything that she ate that was cold, what he would do, it would force the body to send blood to her stomach to allow her to digest. So one of the things we had to avoid when we would travel in particular is she had to avoid eating salads. Were cold, or ice cream or anything that was cold, simply because her body would adjust in a way that you would take her so long to recover and warm up again and tense up the muscles and stuff like this. So when we would travel, she wouldn't eat any salads just because it was something that would affect the way that she would feel. Um, and for us to even figure that out and got to the point, okay, well, you have to avoid this in your diet. It wasn't something that it happened overnight. It was conversation after conversation after conversation trying to figure out what was going wrong. One of the other challenges that we face is when she was going through, she had gone through a knee surgery recently. It happened after the 2009 World Championship. She had a reconstructive knee surgery. Is we focused a lot on her knee recovery, strengthening the knee. What we noticed is during her races, she was able to perform at a really high level for about 40 meters, which is about 80% of the race, 85%, and then her body would shut down, her legs would shut down. And for the majority of the time during her preparation was, let's focus on the knee. Let's strengthen the knee. Let's do what we can to make sure that the knee can perform at the highest level and kind of follow what the rest of the body is attempting to do. She had one of the trainers, it was a person from Australia that would come in from time to time and do some exercises that were strictly designed to strengthen her knee. We used to do occlusion training, and that was 13 years ago, 14 years ago, which it wasn't really done by a lot of people. And even though we went through extreme lengths to try to strengthen her leg and do exercises that would strengthen her leg and prepare her to race at the highest level, we still had limitations. I remember clearly in one of the workouts, and it was very interesting to me because Dara is a few years older than me. She's nearly 12 years older than me, and she was frustrated. And in one of the workouts, she wasn't able to perform to the level that she needed to perform. And let me just put it this way, we had a very heated argument on the pool deck. So here I am working with a five-time Olympic swimmer that was at that time considered one of the most decorated swimmers in all sports. She's an American icon and somebody that accomplished so much in her swimming career, getting into a shouting match with me on the pool deck. Just because of the frustration and how she felt. And one of the things that I learned early on with Dara was she would voice her opinion, whichever way she felt she needed a voice. She wanted a resolution right there and then. But the interesting part of it is while we were going through this heated argument, and she ended up leaving the workout, the very next day she came like nothing happened. She acted like we didn't have an argument the day before. We didn't have a disagreement, and she wasn't upset. She needed to get that out of her system. She needed to tell me how she felt. I needed to digest what she was trying to tell me, and I needed to, if I needed to, make changes to what we were doing to allow that to not happen again. And we did. We worked through that. And it required a lot of patience. I mean, it was something that it was frustrating at times, discovering some of the limitations that we had. One of the challenges that we had on the top of everything I just told you, Kathy, was we believe that during her knee surgery, there must have been some sort of nerve damage or some flow of oxygen to that knee that limited her ability to perform at the highest level. So what we felt is that when there was a production of lactic acid to such a high level and there was a removal from the area, the legs would just simply shut down. So
Hmm.
she couldn't kick at the same intensity through the whole 50 meters, which was, the goal was to swim under 25 seconds. She couldn't do this at the highest level for less than 25 seconds. And what we ended up doing along the way, and that happened about 4 to 5 weeks before trials, we did a full 180 switch. We went from focusing on her knee recovery and strengthening the knee and kind of trying to do the best that we can. And it was, a group of five of us working together. The staff involved a number of people in trying to find a ways of making this work, that we realized that it wouldn't work,
Hmm.
that we needed to shift our focus to something else. So about 5 weeks out from trials, we did a full 180, and the focus, while we still maintained the focus on the leg, we became focusing a lot more on the upper body. The challenge was she has done multiple shoulder surgeries in both of her shoulders, is how much can her shoulders handle? How much overload at this point, so close to trials, that she can handle it. And so Dara and I sat down, and I remember having this meeting. We went to a restaurant, we had lunch together, and I said, listen, I said, this is going to blow up in our face. This is just not going to work. And I said, this is what we need to do. She bought into it. And so did the whole staff. We spoke with all of them and said, okay, we have to do a full 180 and switch what we're doing. This is what we're doing moving forward. I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page and understanding what we're trying to accomplish. And she bought into it. She said, if that's what you believe it's best, that's what we're going to do. And we did it. And honestly, even though she didn't qualify for the Olympic Games at that time, she missed, like you mentioned early on, missed making the team by 9/100ths of a second. At the age of 45, the goal, of course, it was to make the Olympic team, but it was to swim under 25 seconds 3 times. She needed to do that at prelims, she needed to do it at semifinals, and she needed to do that at finals, which we didn't accomplish for 10 months. She would swim well prelims, she would swim okay for semis, but she could never swim finals at the highest level. She couldn't break 25. So Olympic trials was the only competition in her whole preparation leading to that trials that she was able to swim under 25 seconds 3 times and feel good about it. So patience played a huge role in trying to accomplish that goal. Even though some people will say that it was a failure, she didn't accomplish what she set out to accomplish. Um, I can tell you, and Dara and I have had these conversations over and over and over again, that she is satisfied with the outcome simply because she knows that deep in her mind that she did everything she could, and she has left no stones unturned. She did everything she could to accomplish that goal. And even though she didn't make the Olympic team, she knows that she swam the fastest she could have swum at the age of 45.
What a great feeling that she left no stone unturned. It's not easy to be at a point where you can say you did everything. Um, yeah.
She and I have had, at least in 3 different occasions, conversations about it. And Dara is still a very competitive person. I mean, she's 57 or 58 now. She and I from time to time still work out together, and she can give me a hard time. She's pretty strong, but she's very competitive in everything she does. But it's definitely, conversations that we've had that she's told me. She said, I'm good about what we've accomplished. It was for me, it gave me peace of mind to know that what we did and we set out to accomplish, even though it was slightly short of the end goal, that both Dara and I feel very, very comfortable about the outcome.
Yeah, and I think that you strengthen the point really well about being patient, that if we anticipate challenges and we're willing to make adjustments, it helps us be patient. So at the very onset, when we're thinking about what are we going to take, what are we going to undertake, what's the goal, just saying, you know what, there are going to be really tough times, curveballs. You're going to go from focusing on the knee to focusing on the shoulders. And then saying, anticipating those, not that you can anticipate all of them, but saying, look, this is going to happen. If I want to get this goal, it's not going to be a straight line, right?
It was, I remember at some point, and I know that you mentioned this about the challenges. At some point, she broke her big toe. I think she hit a corner of furniture, and you got somebody that swims a sprint race. It's a 50 meter. She was not training for the 100. Um, Even though some of her training was designed for the 100, the focus was the 50. And breaks her toe. And, we used to do often dives with her, and try to, improve her dive. And all of a sudden, she can't do dives. And we went through, going back to what you mentioned early on about the planning part of it. We actually purchased the same starting block that was going to be used at Olympic trials. We wanted to make sure that she felt comfortable enough doing dives. So we purchased, and it was different than the starting blocks that we had at our facility at that time. And, we asked the city if we could actually install the starting block around the diving well. And they said, sure, anything to help her accomplish the goal. So we ended up installing starting block in a dive well. And during that process, after she broke her toe, we had to find ways of still being able to execute the dive on in in a fast manner that was effective, which she would hit the water at a high speed and be able to get up and go, right? So one of the things that came with that challenge along the way is the modification that we end up making to her dive by adjusting the foot placement on the starting block. And that happened to be the leg that was in the front at that time. He actually ended up being better. We found out something that actually I don't think a lot of, the top of coaches in the world actually know this, that the mechanic and the change in the dive itself, we actually maximize the amount of power that she used with her front leg by making that small adjustment of the placement of her foot in the front. And that came strictly by accident. It was, how can we do a dive where you feel no pain on your toe and still continue to work on dives because we got trials coming up, and we had to be patient. We had to figure out a way where she felt comfortable enough when we did it, aggravate the injury. It was definitely interesting. I mean, we definitely had some challenges along the way that made the whole experience a lot more interesting than I wanted it to be. So, but we learned from it, and it was a good experience.
And who would think you would learn from a broken big toe, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's another example. It's interesting because there's one of the other, it's just considered one of the most decorated swimmers in the world in history. Natalie Coughlin, right? She was another icon in the world of swimming. She has just as many medals as Dara Torres. And she went through a shoulder surgery after an injury, and the rehab period lasted 15 months. And guess what she did? She focused on her underwaters. She focusing on push-ups and improving her dolphin kicks on the water. And after the shoulder surgery, she became one of the most dominant underwater kickers in the world. Ended up breaking the world record after the shoulder surgery. So
Mhm.
I guess you can learn, I think what we learned from this is that you can learn from anything. And I think you learn more from having setbacks than you learn by having things going the way you really plan, just simply because it forces you to adjust to something that you didn't foresee was going to happen. So it's definitely a good experience.
I don't like to inject anything of my own experience normally just because it's not about me, but it's a very interesting point when I started running when I was 40 and I had stress fractures. I remember going to the surgeon and saying, well, the World Masters Games, the Nike World Masters Games are in 3 months. Shall I just not go? I was going to do an 800. And he said, no, no, you can do water running. And at that time, people looked at you very strangely in 1998 when I was water running, but I did it and I won the silver medal there. So, you know, I I trusted him. I did it, and who would have thought that that was going to be a tool in my toolkit, which it continued to be. So, yeah, it's having patience, anticipating challenges, making adjustments, and who knows what's going to happen, right? The other, the final question I wanted to ask, because this is about finding new starting lines, whether it's setting a new goal at a new age in a sport that you know well or taking on a new sport. But how would you say that new beginnings have uh, can change, finding new starting lines and new beginnings can change our perspectives in general, maybe in ways that pervade, you know, our whole ways of thinking about the future or our lives.
I think it's very important for you to be open-minded. I think it is literally probably the most important things. I can give you a couple examples of my own experience. I've been coaching for a little bit over 25 years. I spent 23 years of my life in Florida. Um, the last 2 years over there were some challenges, both, personal challenges and professional challenges over there that we faced in my relationship with the city and the swim club, the way that it was run. And Dara offered me this great opportunity to be able to come to BC. She was something that she really wanted to do. It was something that was challenging to her, being able to coach at a Division I program in a Power Five conference. And while I was going through my struggles and my challenges at a personal level back at home, for nearly 2 years of challenges, there was this, what I saw it as a golden opportunity for me to grow as an individual, an opportunity to me to grow professionally. So when Dara eventually got the job, the idea was to bring me on board to work with her. The experience was enticing to me, one, because, I've known her for nearly 20 years and I feel like I know her well. And it gave me an opportunity to work with collegiate level athletes, which I hadn't done in a few years. And while I was trying to debate the challenges that I was facing for 2 years, all of a sudden something positive happened in my life. There was something that was really good. So it was very important for me to keep an open mind about opportunities that may come along the way, that if you stay focused on what you're facing, and you may miss out on an opportunity that may come along the way simply because you're so stuck in your own ways of doing things. Fast forward, I've been at BC since August of last year, so I'm inching to a year working at BC. I moved here. Has it been easy and smooth? No, family's still in Florida, like I've told you. The challenges of coaching at a collegiate level are different challenges than coaching at a club level. I love the opportunity. I love the experience. I love what I do. I love working at BC. It's something that it was something that I never thought I was going to get the opportunity to do. And then again, years later, after working with her for 13 years, the opportunity knocked on my door. And, here I am working at Division I collegiate level swim program. And one of the other things that I want to do is always get my master's. So, then another doors just opened, the possibility of actually attending BC and graduating and getting my master's here just open up, along with this opportunity of getting a job of coaching at a collegiate level. So I had to be really open to the idea of, okay, you may have to move on to something that was really good for you for a while. It's been challenging for a couple of years, and stay open to opportunities. They may be knocking on your door, and if you stay closed-minded about that opportunity, you may miss an opportunity to make yourself get better, or evolve in your life and become a better person, a better individual, a better professional. So I think the importance is always stay close to your true beliefs and what you want to accomplish in life, but then have an open mind that things may not always happen the way that you want it to be. And then life may lead you in different directions that may have a positive outcome in your life. And I think it's very important for you to just pay attention to what's going on around you and in your life, and make sure that you make the decisions that are going to help you, in that trajectory you have in your life. So.
I love that. It's almost as if new starting lines they're contagious in a positive way.
Absolutely. Positive thinking is very important for everything you do, not just as an athlete or as a professional. If the more you think positive, the more good things are going to come.
Bruno, this was inspiring for me, and I hope it is for others. And thank you so much for joining us on Finding a New Starting Line. I appreciate this a lot, and thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate having the opportunity to be part of this.